of a difficult subject today. I would say it's one I've been avoiding a bit, but an important one. It's the death of a parent. And I think for any of us, that's always scary. You know, nobody wants their parents to pass away. Mine was a little different. They weren't, it wasn't age that took them. It wasn't illness necessarily. It was, but it wasn't. It was just different circumstances. And so, yeah, I'll just kind of dive in. In June of 2020, my dad contracted COVID. My dad was a powerhouse. He was amazing. He'd overcome and endured so much in his younger years. He did 2 tours in Vietnam. He watched his best friend be killed in Vietnam right next to him. He'd been through a lot. I remember as a child waking up and he'd have night terrors, and you know, PTSD wasn't a thing like it is today. They didn't have the support that they do now back in those days. And they were also shamed, you know, when they came back from a war that they were forced into. It was just an unfair time. But he endured that, and then he became a police officer and experienced a lot doing that as well. And just, you know, as a kid, he was just larger than life. And even as an adult, you know, looking at my dad, he was just larger in life. I just, you know, I worshiped him. He was amazing and so strong. And so in his 70s and his, you know, retired years, he lived in Vegas, he and my stepmom, and he golfed almost daily. I mean, weekly for sure, 18 holes. He was just, again, powerhouse. The man would wake up at 4:30 every morning and go walk 5 miles. He was just a very strong individual, and I really looked up to him. In June, he contracted COVID and ended up going into the hospital. And he was there for about 5 weeks. I went ahead, and once I knew he was in the hospital, I bought a ticket and flew down to Vegas to stay with my stepmom. I knew that I couldn't visit him in the hospital, but just being in closer proximity made me feel better and helped me to know that I was helping him by being there with her. I know he was concerned. They had a very, very good marriage. They were tight. And loved each other very much. So I think he knew that she would be lost and really having a hard time. So I thought that would be the way that I could help him, and he was so grateful. So I took time off work and flew down and stayed with her for several weeks until he started to get to go on the mend. You know, he was in rough shape for a while there, weak, and lost a lot of weight, and had the cannula, the oxygen, and he refused to go on a ventilator at first, and then several weeks in, he finally agreed to go on a ventilator. It just scared him. You know, everything was so unknown at that time and scary. So he finally agreed to go on a ventilator, but by that time he'd actually taken a turn for the better and was doing fairly well. And so they took him out of ICU and put him back into a regular room. Unfortunately, they did not check on him because he still tested positive for COVID. They wouldn't go in frequently to check on him. Where somebody who normally has respiratory issues, I think they're probably in there every 30 minutes or so checking on him. But because he had COVID and it was during COVID times, they would go in every 3 to 4 hours to check on him. So the day of his death, my stepmother hadn't heard from him. They text back and forth frequently, and she hadn't heard from him. So about 8 a.m. she called into the nurse's station and said, "Hey, I haven't heard from him. I'm very worried about him. Can you please check on him?" They said, "Oh, he's sleeping." And she said, "No, he doesn't sleep this late. Can you check on him?" Well, they didn't go in to check on him until about 10 o'clock a.m. And by that time, they realized that he had taken a drink of water and choked on it. and he was gray and barely breathing. His skin had gone gray. So they called a code and started working on him, but it was just too late. It was too late. Then he died. So he made it through COVID, only to die from choking on water. And I can't tell you how frustrating it is as the family to know that he made it that far and endured that much to die on a glass of water because nobody was checking on him. So after all that, we had my stepmom set up a meeting with the hospital board, and they changed their policies to check on people more frequently and not leave them alone for as long as they had. Because it was COVID times, there was, nothing we could do legally. And that was that. He was gone, gone. So I was devastated. We all were just devastated. It was like I stepped outside myself and was watching things happen around me. So we flew down, my husband and I flew down and met my brother and my stepmom in North Carolina, and we buried my dad. And when I flew back from that, literally the very next day, my dog, Sammy, who was about 6 years old, and just the best dog, such a sweetheart, all of a sudden couldn't walk up the stairs anymore and was crying anytime he had to lift himself up on anything. And within days, he just couldn't even use his back legs anymore. Apparently, he had a birth defect that had just taken a turn, and we didn't even know it existed. So we took him into the vet. We got an orthopedic vet that we had an appointment for, and he just kept having, more and more pain. So we took him in several times to the vet, and finally I asked the vet if this was your dog, and he said if this was my dog, I'd put him down today as a kindness. So I did. I put Sammy down. And a week after that, I went to pick up his ashes, and I was sitting in the parking lot of the vet clinic with his ashes in my lap, crying, and my phone rang. And I answered the phone, and it was the hospital. And they were calling to let me know that my mother had been admitted and brought in by ambulance, and that she had fallen and hit her head and was in the CT scan, and they were going to call me back and let me know what was going on. So I rushed home, called my brothers and my aunt to let them know what was going on. And then the neurologist called from the hospital and said that the fall had caused a hematoma that had taken over the left hemisphere of her brain, and that it was fatal, that she was not going to live through it, that they had her on the machines keeping her alive, but we needed to come in and say goodbye. So just miraculously, we were all in town, and we were all able to make it down there and be there with her and say goodbye. And then I was her guardian. My mom had Alzheimer's, so I was the one that had to give the official okay to shut off the machines. And she died instantly. So within less than a month and a half's time, I lost my father, my dog, my mother. And it was like an existential crisis. I was just outside myself. I couldn't barely function. So I took on 2 more jobs. Actually, Jennifer helped me out and let me work out of her office and helped me stay busy during that time. Nobody knew what they could do to make me feel better. How do you make somebody feel better after that? I didn't even know how to make myself feel better. So I worked. I'd get up at 7 in the morning and I'd go to my first job, and then the second job, and then the third job, and I'd come home at midnight, 1 o'clock, and I just kept busy. And my dogs are playing in the background. And that was the way that I coped. You know, we all cope differently. But I would say that I had this like inner crisis of like I lost my identity. You know, losing your parents. They help form your identity. They bring you up in their home with love, and you know, if you're lucky, you know, you've got parents that love you and treat you well and do the best they can. All parents make mistakes. We all make mistakes, you know, but we all do the best we can. And my parents certainly did. Hey. Lay down. Stop it. You crazy dogs. Anyway, yeah, it just was like a whole year went by. I was checked out working 2-3 jobs and just staying busy, and things happened and life flowed by and I was not cognizant for any of it. Once I kind of came out of that fog, I would tell my husband, geez, you know, when did the puppy grow up? I don't even remember her being a puppy. And he'd say, well, you weren't here. You know, you were never here. And it's not that I didn't want to be with my family or be with my kids or husband. There was almost this utter fear that something might happen to them too. I mean, I just checked out. I can't even explain it. It was just the way that I coped, you know. It was such a difficult and emotional thing that it's like my brain couldn't even wrap around it. So I just checked out. I eventually came back to and came back to life and back to the family and back to living, you know, became unfrozen. Not a day goes by that I don't miss my parents. I think about them still every day. Every day I miss my dad's voice. I miss his advice. He was such a smart person. God, he was smart. He was so smart. And it's hard not having him here. And I miss my mom. She was amazing, beautiful, beautiful woman. And I watched her slowly leave us with Alzheimer's. But then that devastating, violent end was almost unbearable to go through as her child. So it's, you know, it still guts me every day to not have them here. You know, they should still be here. They'd be in their 80s, or excuse me, in their 70s. They'd be in their 70s today, which, you know, people live into their 80s every day. So I think if your parents are elderly or have some sort of illness, you almost are able to prepare for the death a little bit. And I think as twisted as that may sound, it makes it just a shred easier than losing them tragically and rapidly, very quickly. That was rough. Or losing them when you shouldn't lose them. You know, my mom shouldn't have fallen. My dad shouldn't have choked on water after enduring 5 weeks of fighting for his life with COVID, to come out of that just to choke on water. That pain it just shut my brain off. It fried my brain. It just, you know, to this day, it just shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't have happened. But as a child, like I said, my identity was shaken a bit, and the fear of something happening to my husband or children just was like a wave over me. I couldn't get over the thought that something might happen. You know, I had 3 tragic things happen in a row, and I was so terrified that something else might happen that I just shut down. I can't explain it. You know, I'm not qualified to explain it. Probably a very good therapist could explain it, but yeah, we all handle death and loss differently. The only solace that I can give you is we do come back out of it. You will come back out of it. You will come back to life. Things get better. You never stop missing them, especially if they were loving parents. You'll never stop missing your parents. But it does get better, and life does go on. And you learn to cherish the memories that you had with them and the good times, and you learn to just move on. And be grateful that you were able to spend the time that you were with them, and be grateful that they were good to you, you know? And I think the harder you fall when you lose a parent, it's just a sign of how well they loved you. how well they loved you, you know? Yeah, my parents loved me well, and I'm grateful for that. Yeah. Anyway, if any of you are going through this, maybe this story can give you some help or some solace or some hope. I'd love to discuss it further with you. If you have any questions, drop a line for sure. Be happy to go over it or to lend you an ear or some support. I think that's what we're here for. This channel is for support and to help people get through the hard times, you know, and to let you all know that there's more good times in the future. Even though we go through the hard times, we have to wade through that muck. We do come out on the other end, and we're better for it. You know, the loss of my parents, still devastating, but man alive, I'm so glad they were my parents. I'm so glad that I had the time that I did with them, and I cherish that time. I cherish the memories and the good times. So just hold on to that for sure. And if your parents are still here, love them while you got them, you know, love them while you got them. Let them know how much you love them and care for them. So I hope that was helpful. Like, share, subscribe. If you have a story similar or something to share that you think might help somebody else wade through the muck, by all means, share it with us. We'd love to hear from you. I hope you're all doing well. Much love to